Lyra Ashwood had learned early in life not to expect much. She was the daughter of a healer who had fallen out of favor with the Silver Fang Pack years before Lyra was born, and because of that, she had grown up on the edges of everything. She stood at the back of gatherings. She was the last to be greeted and the first to be forgotten. So when Alpha King Damian Cross chose her as his mate in front of the entire pack, she thought her life had finally changed. For 3 months, it felt like it had. Damian was attentive in public and warm in private, and Lyra allowed herself to believe that the girl nobody noticed had somehow become the woman standing beside the most powerful man in their world. She stopped bracing herself for disappointment. She let herself hope, fully and without guard, for the first time in her life. That hope ended on an ordinary evening in early autumn. She had gone looking for Damian to tell him something small, something about a festival being planned in the village, and instead, she found him in his private chambers with Seraphina, the pack's beta female. There was no mistaking what she saw. There was no explanation that could soften it. Lyra stood frozen in the doorway for a long moment, waiting for her mind to make sense of what her eyes were telling her, and when it finally did, something inside her went very quiet and very still. She did not scream. She did not cry. Not yet. She simply asked him why. Damian's answer was worse than his actions. He told her, without much emotion at all, that she had never been anything more than a convenient choice. He said the pack had needed to see him settled, and she had been available, and that he had always known someone more suitable would come along eventually. He said the word placeholder, and Lyra felt it land in her chest like a physical blow. Word of the betrayal spread through Silverfang territory before the sun rose. By mid-morning, Damian had called a gathering in the central square, and in front of the full pack, he stripped Lyra of her claim mark and named her exiled. Nobody objected. Nobody dared. Lyra stood in the center of the crowd that had once cheered her name and felt every eye either avoid her or watch her with open pity, which somehow hurt more. She left before nightfall. She took nothing with her except the clothes she wore, and she walked north, away from the only home she had ever known, until her legs gave out somewhere near the border of Nightshade territory. She did not know, and did not particularly care, that she had wandered into the lands of Silverfang's oldest and most dangerous rival. She only knew that she could not take another step, and that the cold had begun to feel like something she might simply let happen to her. She was found by a pair of Nightshade scouts just before dawn, curled against the roots of an old tree, barely conscious. They carried her back to their stronghold, uncertain whether their alpha would want a Silverfang wolf brought into his territory at all, especially one who might be a spy or a trap. Cale Vantrell did not see a spy when he looked at her. He saw the faded outline of a claim mark that had clearly been forcibly removed, and understood immediately what that meant. He had spent years studying Damian Cross, learning his weaknesses and his cruelties, and he recognized the marks of that particular cruelty at once. He gave orders for her to be cared for, and he did not ask her questions until she was strong enough to answer them. When he finally did ask, sitting across from her in a quiet room while she wrapped both hands around a cup of tea she had not yet touched, Lyra told him everything. She did not soften it or shape it into something more dignified. She simply told him the truth, plainly, the way it had happened. Cale listened without interrupting. When she finished, he did not offer comfort, and he did not offer pity, both of which Lyra was grateful for, since she suspected either one would have broken her completely. Instead, he asked her a single question. What do you want to do now? Lyra realized, sitting there in enemy territory with nothing left to lose, that no one had ever asked her that before, not once, in her entire life. She had been given instructions, expectations, and eventually a crown that had turned out to mean nothing at all. But no one had ever simply asked what she wanted. She did not have an answer that day, but she stayed. The following weeks turned into months, and Lyra found herself woven slowly into the rhythm of Nightshade life. She was given a place to sleep, tasks to do, and eventually, at her own request, training. She wanted to learn to fight, not out of a desire for revenge exactly, but because she was tired of being someone things simply happened to. She wanted, for the first time, to be someone capable of deciding what happened next. Cale trained her himself, more often than not. He was patient in a way that surprised her, given his reputation across the two territories as ruthless and unyielding. He pushed her hard, but he never mocked her for stumbling, and he never made her feel small for needing to try something more than once. Slowly, without either of them quite naming it, something shifted between them. It was not sudden. There was no single dramatic moment where everything changed. It was built instead from small things, the way Kale began seeking her opinion during pack council discussions, the way Lyra found herself looking forward to their training sessions for reasons that had little to do with combat, the quiet evenings when they sat together after everyone else had gone to sleep and talked about nothing important at all. Lyra found herself laughing again, really laughing, for the first time since before Damien. She was careful with her heart. She had trusted fully once, and it had cost her everything. But Kale never gave her a reason to doubt him, not once, not in a single small moment, or a single large one. He was consistent in a way Damien had never been, and consistency, Lyra came to understand, mattered far more than grand gestures ever could. Nearly a year after she had arrived at Nightshade's border, half frozen and broken, Kale asked her to stand beside him as his Luna. He did not frame it as an act of defiance against Damien, though both of them understood the weight it would carry across both territories. He framed it simply, honestly, as something he wanted for himself, and asked if it was something she wanted too. Lyra said yes, not because it would humiliate the man who had discarded her, though it would, and not because it would prove something to a pack that had once watched her walk away without a single objection. She said yes, because for the first time in her life, someone had chosen her fully, with nothing held back, and nothing hidden, and she found that she wanted to choose him back. The ceremony that bound them was small, attended only by Nightshade's inner circle, but word of it reached Silverfang territory within days. Lyra had known it would. She had not tried to hide it, and some quiet part of her had not entirely minded the idea of Damien hearing. His response came faster than she expected. Within 2 weeks, a messenger arrived at Nightshade's border, demanding Lyra's return, citing an old treaty clause that claimed any Silverfang-born wolf remained bound to Silverfang authority, regardless of exile or later claims. It was a desperate argument, built on a technicality that had not been invoked in generations, and everyone who heard it understood exactly what it really was. Damien could not stand the idea of what her new position represented, and he was grasping for any thread that might let him undo it. Kale's counsel urged him to refuse the messenger outright and send him back with nothing, but Lyra asked to meet Damien herself, at the border, in front of witnesses from both territories. Kale did not like the idea. She could see the worry in his face when she suggested it, but he did not forbid her either. He trusted her to know what she needed to do, and that trust meant more to her than she could easily put into words. She stood at the border 3 days later, dressed in Nightshade colors, the new claim mark visible at her neck, with Kale beside her and a line of warriors at her back who had come to genuinely respect her over the past year. Across the line, Damien arrived with his own guard, and Seraphina beside him, though Lyra found she felt almost nothing looking at her now, not even the old sting of betrayal. That wound, it seemed, had finally closed. Damien spoke first, repeating the treaty argument, his voice carrying the same practiced authority Lyra remembered from every gathering she had once stood behind rather than beside. He spoke as though the outcome were already decided, as though she would simply fall back into place the way she always had before. Lyra let him finish, then she spoke, and her voice did not shake. She reminded him, plainly, in front of both packs, of the exact words he had used the night he cast her out. She did not raise her voice, or dress the memory up in anger. She simply repeated what he had said, word for word, and let the weight of it sit in the silence that followed. She told him that a wolf who had called her worthless and disposable had no claim, treaty or otherwise, on anything she chose to become afterward. "You said I was never worthy of Silverfang," she told him. "You were right. I wasn't. I was worthy of more, and I found it, and I am not giving it back to you." Kale's counsel formally rejected the treaty claim on the spot, citing the clear evidence of the forced removal of her original claim mark, which under the older laws Damien himself had cited, voided any further authority he might have tried to assert. Damien had walked into the meeting expecting to reclaim something, He left, having lost the argument in front of witnesses from both sides. Unable to force the issue without starting a conflict he was in no position to win, not against a territory that now stood fully behind the woman he had discarded. He did not return again. In the months that followed, Lyra settled fully into her place at Nightshade, not as a symbol of victory over Silverfang, though others sometimes framed it that way, but simply as herself, finally given the space to become whoever she wanted to be. She continued her training, she took on real responsibilities within the pack, and she found that she was good at the work, better than she had ever been given the chance to discover before. She built friendships with Nightshade wolves, who had once eyed her with suspicion, and came, slowly, to trust her completely. She and Kale built something steady together, something that did not depend on grand declarations or public displays to feel real. It was there in the quiet mornings, in the way he still sought her opinion on matters large and small, in the way neither of them ever had to wonder where they stood with the other. It was, Lyra realized one evening, as she watched the sun set over Nightshade territory, from the same spot Kale had first found her half-frozen and broken, everything she had once believed she would never have. She thought of the girl who had stood at the back of every gathering, waiting to be noticed, and the woman she had eventually let herself become when someone finally did notice her, only to be discarded once he had. Neither of those versions of herself, she understood now, had ever truly known her own worth. It had taken losing everything, and rebuilding herself from nothing in the heart of enemy territory, to finally understand that her worth had never depended on anyone else's willingness to see it. The crown she wore now was not a symbol of revenge, whatever others chose to believe about it. It was simply proof that she had survived being told she was nothing, and had found her way, on her own terms, to becoming exactly who she was always meant to be.